He is 100 names of horror. The creature you love the least in the world. Put his name in front of you and exorcise the monster. Tilda Ian Anderson. The creature moved unseen and inaudible, considering all the possibilities that were available in a crowded nightclub. The sex of the victim didn't really matter, since the creature was neither male nor female, and could pass for either of them at any given time, depending on its mood. All that really mattered was the flexibility of the goal. That's it, the creature thought, noticing a young, charming woman in a short red dress. She seemed like a happy creature dancing with different men. In a noisy club, having an engagement ring was even better. The creature slid forward and watched. As the woman interacted with different men, and they flirted with her, he laughed to himself as he watched the woman reject the advances of several handsome young men. Very nice, the creature thought to itself. I can hide here for a while. While I'm here, maybe I can corrupt her. It moved closer to her and synchronized its movements with hers. Soon it began the process of merging with her, and after a few moments it completely dissolved into her body, and she did not even realize what had happened. While the woman was moving, the creature was getting to know its new home. The woman's name was Carrie Hampton, and she was here with friends from her office for a bachelorette party that she held once or twice a month, just to let off steam. She had been married to a computer scientist named Bill for almost 5 years, and still remained absolutely faithful to him. It won't be long, the creature thought viciously. Hi, Carrie, it's only around 9 o'clock. And I promised George I'd be home by 10 o'clock, another woman said, approaching Carrie. Okay, I'm coming, Carrie called out before saying goodbye to the two men vying for her attention. The creature was inactive while Carrie returned home with her friend and made love to her husband. It was about the middle of October, the day before our 5th anniversary. I watched my wife as she prepared for another bachelorette party, upset that she was going to a party on our anniversary day. I booked a table for the evening at Luigi's, a pretty upscale Italian restaurant, but Carrie said she wanted to go out with the girls instead. But today is our 5th anniversary weekend, I told her. Do you know how hard it is to book a table at Luigi's? So reschedule it for tomorrow night, she said, waving me away with a wave of her hand. Can't just change it at the last minute, I told her. I had to wait almost 2 weeks to book a table. Look, it's just a restaurant, she said. I promised the girls that I would go with them, and that's what I intend to do. You've been seeing a lot of girls lately, I said. This will be the 3rd night this week. What's happening? Why would you go to our anniversary with them? The thing is, I promised them that I would come. You know, I need my own space too. The office has been restless lately, and I need it. Now stop whining and zip me up, okay? Button yourself up, I said irritably before leaving the bedroom. I went downstairs, grabbed the flowers I bought for her that day, and angrily threw them in the trash. Damn it, I thought to myself. Why did you do that? I heard behind me. Turning around, I saw Carrie standing at the bottom of the stairs. I like these flowers. They were beautiful. I bought them for our anniversary, I said. But you made it clear that girls are more important than us in our 5th anniversary. What the hell has been going on with you the last few weeks? What do you mean? What is it? She asked. You've become a completely different person lately, I said. I don't even know you. Do you have someone else? She snorted at that. Maybe I just need some personal space. She chuckled. And no, there is no one else yet. It's not like there weren't any offers. They were. However, after the way you behave, I might agree with one or two of them. What? I asked, shocked. Carrie knows how I feel about adultery. We have discussed this quite often. She knows that in my opinion, it would be done once and for all. Would you cheat on me? I could, especially after what you just did, she said with a grin. I felt my anger rising and counted to 10 before doing something I knew I would regret. If you do, then don't bother coming home, I said when I calmed down. This seems to have caught her attention, and her attitude has changed significantly. Look, I'm sorry, she said. You just pissed me off when you threw away my flowers. It's just for one night. We can still go somewhere tomorrow, but the table is booked in. Advance. Take Ginny with you if you're determined to go, she said. Your sister asked. Ginny was only 11 months younger than Carrie, and I knew she was in love with me. Yes, she would love to eat at Luigi's, Carrie said. I'll call her if you want. I started to object, but Carrie had already taken out her phone and called her sister. Hi, girl, she said. Do you have anything planned for the evening? No. How would you like to have dinner with Bill at Luigi's tonight? I don't know. Let me ask you something. She closed the phone and looked at me. What time is the reservation? At 7 o'clock in the evening, I told her. She turned back to the phone. Reservation of a table for 7 o'clock. Can you be ready in say half an hour? Great. I'll ask Bill to pick you up. See you later, she said, ending the conversation. She put the phone back in her purse and looked at me. Well, you'd better hurry up. Ginny's waiting for you, and I hope that you will behave in that best possible way. Have fun. I'll see you later tonight. At that moment, I heard a car horn outside. This is my car. I think I'll go. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. What time will you be home? I asked. I don't know for sure, she said. I'll be home when I get back. How do you like it? And with that, she walked out the door without even kissing me or telling me she loved me. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I called my older brother Ron. Hi, bro, how are you? He asked. This baby just went to her girlfriend's. Can you believe that? Did you tell her about the reservation at Luigi's? He asked. Yeah, but it didn't mean shit to her, I said. In fact, she called her sister to take her place. Ginny, you know she's been salivating over you for a long time. He doesn't even look at me. Are you going to take advantage of this? Are you kidding? No way. Look, Ginny is a very sweet girl. But I'm not going to do this to Carrie. Okay, so what are you going to do? I installed a location app on Carrie's phone, as you suggested. Do you think you could look after her for me? I asked. We discussed this earlier when Carrie's attitude got so bad that I was ready to snap. Ron used to work for the police department, but lost his job after the city government cut the police budget. Now he works as a private investigator for one of the largest and most famous firms in the city. I think I could do it, he said, but it's going to cost you a 6-pack of beer. Do it for me and I'll buy you a box, I said. Well, then maybe I'd better do a good job for you. Huh? He asked sarcastically. I couldn't help but laugh. Don't worry, bro. Leave it to a professional. Invite Ginny out and have a good time. I'll be in touch. Thanks, bro. I owe you a lot. I said, you're damn right. He said with a laugh. We'll talk later. We finished talking and I got ready for what was supposed to be a date in honor of my anniversary with Carrie. I drove up to the apartment complex where Ginny lived and knocked on her door. After a few moments, I had to remind myself to breathe. Well, what do you think? What is it? She asked. You look absolutely gorgeous, I said. Your carriage is waiting, I added, offering her my arm. Thank you, good sir, she said with a smile. For a moment, I regretted being married. I walked her to my car and opened the door for her. After helping her inside, I got behind the wheel and headed for the restaurant. So why don't you take Carrie out? Isn't this your 5th anniversary weekend? What is it? She asked as I drove. Yes, they were, I said. Carrie decided she'd rather spend our anniversary weekend with the girls, I said, pronouncing with the girls in quotation marks. What's gotten into her lately? Ginny asked. I have no idea, I replied, but I don't like it, not a bit. Me too, she said. Lately, it's like she's become a completely different person. You noticed that too, didn't you? I asked. Yes, she replied. And to be honest, I find it a little intimidating. You and me, I said. Well, at least something good came out of it, she said. What is it? I asked. I was finally able to spend the evening alone with my beloved son-in-law, she said with a sly smile. The last time I looked, I was your only son-in-law, I said. Yes, it is, but you are still my favorite, she said. So you think she's cheating on you? What is it? She asked after a few moments. I think so, I said. I'm pretty sure it is. Stupid girl, she hissed. I'll know for sure after tonight, I said. What then? If she's cheating on me, I'll divorce her, I said. She knows how I feel about infidelity. I'm really sorry to hear that, she said softly. We arrived at the restaurant and were escorted to the table I had reserved for Carrie and me. We enjoyed dinner and the wine that was served with it. We had small talk over the meal, and although I enjoyed spending time with Ginny, it wasn't at all what I originally had in mind, and she felt it. Look, I know this is embarrassing for you, so if you want, I can take a taxi home, Ginny said after we finished dessert. Nonsense, I said. There was also a drinking and slow dancing area in the restaurant, and the band had already started playing. I mean, yes, I'm a little uncomfortable being here alone with you because this was supposed to be my anniversary dinner with Carrie, but that doesn't mean you're going to leave here without dancing. After all, you're the most beautiful girl in this place. She smiled back. Thanks for the compliment, she said softly. And yes, I would love to dance with my brother-in-law. We got up and I escorted her to the dance floor, where we clung tightly to each other for 2 dances. I felt so good with her, and I found myself regretting being married again. I could easily have fallen in love with this girl. After the second dance, Ginny took a step back and took my hands in hers. She looked at me and I saw tears in her eyes. I'm really sorry that my sister did this to you, she finally said. I had a wonderful time tonight, and I really liked dancing with you. But I think you better take me home before I do something we both might regret later. After all, it was supposed to be Carrie's date, and I feel like if you were being used, I asked, finishing her sentence. Yes, something like that, she said. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed spending time with you, and if the circumstances had been better, who knows what it would have led to. You're a wonderful person, and I could kill Carrie for leaving you. I would never do that to you. Thanks, Ginny, I said. I was already beginning to think that something was wrong with me. There's nothing about you that a good, loyal, loving woman can't fix, she said. Come on, let's get out of here. All right, I said. We stopped at a table and the waiter took my credit card. He returned a few minutes later, and we left the restaurant. We drove to Ginny's apartment in silence. I walked her to the door to make sure she was okay. She opened her door, then turned around and kissed me hard on the lips. Thank you for a wonderful evening, she said. I love you. Before I could say anything, she turned and walked into her apartment, closing the door behind her. I stood there for a couple of minutes wondering what had just happened. I knew Ginny was in love with me, but she had never said she loved me before. I gathered my courage, returned to my car, and drove home. I drove into the garage, hoping that Carrie was already home. I looked at my phone and saw that her phone was in a motel on the outskirts of town. You didn't have to be a private investigator to figure out what she was probably doing. I went inside, changed into jeans and a t-shirt, and poured myself a cup of coffee. Out of curiosity, I called Ron to find out what was going on. He answered on the first ring. How are you, bro? I asked. Well, Bill, I hate to say this, but Carrie is definitely cheating on you, he said quietly. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. She's at a motel on the outskirts of town right now. There are at least 5 guys with her right now. In the last hour, I've seen men come and go. Damn, I said. Yes, said Ron. I'm sorry, brother. I hate bringing bad news. I have a lot of videos for your divorce. Thanks, I said. Any idea if she's coming home tonight? It's hard to say, said Ron. I think she's just warming up. Listen, I'm gonna stay here a little longer, and someone will come out to take over for me. I'll send you a video from the club. It's not nice, Bill. Maybe you shouldn't look at it. I need to know, Ron, I said. I need to see this for myself. I understand. I know this may sound like a cliché, but don't do anything stupid. I don't want to bail you out of jail, Ron said. I get you, I said. Thank you. I owe you a lot. You're damn right, he said with a chuckle. We ended the conversation, and a few moments later, I heard a beep announcing that I had received an email. I opened my mobile client and saw that Ron had sent a couple of short videos. In the first video, Carrie was captured in a club, surrounded by a group of men. She let them paw and fondle her right at the table in full view of Everyone. She surprised me by taking off her panties and throwing them on the table. One man grabbed them and sniffed them in the crotch before putting them in his pocket. I could never imagine. Carrie, whom I married, flaunting herself in public. The men applauded. Most of them were cheering. But there was one man who stood aside and watched while sipping a drink. In the next video, she was captured outside the club in an alley. She took off her dress and knelt naked. The men who were with her unzipped their trousers, and she began to suck off each of them. After a while, one of them picked her up and carried her to the car. After they threw her in the back seat, the car pulled away and the video ended. There were no other videos, but I knew I didn't need to watch them anymore. My marriage broke up. I had no choice but to get divorced. I looked around the house and decided to fuck it all, grabbed the keys, and went to a bar near the house. I was sitting at the bar, drinking beer one after another and thinking about my options. I had been there for some time when I heard a man's voice next to me. "Is anyone sitting here?" I turned around and saw a well-built man about my height standing at the bar next to me. He had sandy-colored hair and narrowed eyes that seemed to look right through me. Something about him seemed familiar to me, but I couldn't remember who he was, perhaps because of the floor length duster he was wearing. I shook my head. "No, have a seat," I said. He sat down and held out his hand. "Steve Iverson," he said. I shook his hand and introduced myself. "Bill Hampton," I told him. "I'm glad to meet you." "The same for me," he said. "So, who's winning?" "What is it?" he asked, nodding at the game that was playing on the big monitor above the bar. "I don't know," I replied. "I don't even know who's playing. I wasn't really paying attention." He nodded and ordered a beer for himself. After paying the bartender, he took a sip and looked at me again. "Problems with women?" he asked. "Yes, you could say that." I agreed. "I'm sorry to hear that," he said softly. "The wife?" "Yes," I said. "At least for the moment." "Are you married?" "I was married once," he said. "A long time ago. She died." "I'm sorry to hear that," I told him. He shrugged his shoulders. "It happens," he said. "Life cycle and all that. We are born, we live, then we die. It happens to all of us." "Do you have children?" I asked. "2 boys," he said. "They joined the army. I haven't seen them in years." "What about you? Are there any children?" I shook my head. "No, no one," I said. "Thank God," I added after a moment's thought. I took a big sip of beer and suddenly felt sick. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I feel it. I feel sick," I moaned. "Let me help you," he said. "We'll be right back," he told the bartender. He carefully escorted me to the men's room where I bowed to the ceramic god several times. When I threw up everything in my stomach, he helped me walk to the wash base and where I cleaned myself up. "Are you feeling better?" "What is it?" he asked while I was wiping my face and hands. I nodded. "A little," I replied. "Maybe it's time to take you home," he said. "Let me help you." I let him take me out of the men's room and back to the bar where he bought a bottle of water. "I'm going to help my friend get home. I don't want him to be stopped," he said to the bartender, who nodded understandably. He walked me to my car, and for a moment I wondered how he knew which car was mine. Although, by and large, it didn't matter to me. He escorted me to the passenger seat and asked for my keys. "Why?" I asked, taking them out of my pocket. "You're in no condition to drive," he said. "Don't worry about me. I can walk back. Come on, get inside. I'll take you home." I did not argue. In fact, I was in no condition to argue. I got into the car, closed the door, and fastened my seatbelt. Steve got behind the wheel, adjusted the seat and rearview mirrors, and then headed for the exit. "Do you know where to go?" I asked. "Yes," he said, causing me some concern. "But first we need to stop somewhere and talk." "Don't worry, you'll be fine." He drove into the park and stopped the car. Then he took a bottle of water, opened it, and poured some on the asphalt. Reaching into the pocket of his raincoat, he pulled out a small bag, opened it, and poured something like a white powder into the water. He closed the bottle, shook it, and handed it to me. "Here, drink this," he said. It will help you feel better. I took the bottle, opened it, and sniffed before taking a sip. He grinned when I sniffed the liquid. It's all right, he said. An old home remedy for all ailments. I use it a lot myself. Come on, have a drink. I took a big sip from the bottle and realized that I liked the taste of it. Citrus with an admixture of honey. I drank some more and soon my head cleared and my stomach was no longer twisting. Are you feeling better now? He asked. I nodded my head. Yes, I said. Whatever it is, maybe you should sell it. Maybe it will turn out to be a great option. You're not the first person to tell me that, he said. You said we needed to talk, I said. Yes, he said. I want to. It's about your wife. Looking closer, I remembered where I'd seen him before. He was at the club and watched. My wife behaved disgracefully at her table. Do you know about my wife? I asked. He nodded his head. Yes, I've been watching her for a while now. You saw her at that club tonight, didn't you? I asked. He nodded his head. Yes, he said. Tell me something, Bill. Do you remember when you started noticing changes in her? Yes, it was about 3 months ago or so, I said. It seems to be true, he said. What do you mean? I asked. He turned and looked at me before continuing. You'll probably think I'm crazy, but you need to know what's going on, he said. Yes, I already know what's going on, I said. My wife has turned into a cheating fool. Yes, but they helped her, he said. Did you help? What does help mean? I asked. She was influenced, he said. There's something about her, something almost as old as history itself. Wait a minute, I said. You're gonna tell me that she was. Is she obsessed with something? Come on, this is ridiculous. Really? He asked. Tell me the truth. Have you ever walked into an empty room and felt that someone or something was watching you? Have you ever had goosebumps run down your spine without explanation? Yes, but there is a logical explanation for all this, I said. Maybe, he said. Maybe not. Perhaps you just don't want to admit that there may be something out there that you don't see, and that you can't or don't want to face. Call it whatever you want, a ghost, a beast, a demon. We all have them. Sometimes they exist in our nightmares. In other cases, they live in our fears. As a child, you often imagined that one of them was right under your bed at night. You would start screaming and your mom would come into your room, soothe your forehead with her magic touch, and the monster would disappear, he said. I stared at him in shock. How did he know that? Your wife is under the influence of such a being, he said. Do you mean the devil or something like that? I asked. Well, I suppose from your point of view that would make as much sense as anything else. He said. What am I supposed to do now? Just pretend that the devil made her do it and forgive her? I asked. He shook his head. This one, the beast, for lack of a better word, didn't force her to do anything, he said. It only fuels the desires that already exist, strengthens them, justifies them in the mind. So you're saying that this beast has just revealed her inner soul? I asked. Something like that, he said. You seem to know a lot about this thing, I said. That's because I've been following her for a long time. She left behind a lot of damage. And what do you want me to do? Can I help you capture this or something like that? I asked. You can't catch something like that, he said. It needs to be killed before it can cause even more damage. Kill him. What will it do to Carrie? It's hard to say, he told me. Of course you can leave it where it is, but I guarantee you that he will use it until he destroys it, and then just throw it aside and move on to the next victim. So anyway, she's done. Is that what you want to tell me? I asked. I hate to say this, but in fact it's her choice, although there is a small chance that she will recover from this meeting, but she will never be completely satisfied going back to her old life. Now that she has tasted what the monster has to offer her, she will always want more, he said. But can you kill this creature without killing her? I asked. Yes, he said, but it's still dangerous. The beast can take her life in response or cause some kind of harm. What should I do? I asked. Just stay close, he said. I'll take on the hard work. I heard a ding and saw him take out his smartphone. He stared at it for a few moments and then put the phone away. She's at your house, and she's not alone. We need to move right now. Are you ready? I wondered why my brother didn't call, and then I remembered that someone had taken his place. Yes, let's do it, I said. He started the car and drove out of the park. It took only a few minutes to get to my house. When we arrived, I saw that the light was on in the master bedroom upstairs. He pulled into the driveway and stopped the car. Carrie's car was already parked in the driveway, and another car was parked in front of the house. Be careful, Steve said. Got it, I said, taking the keys from him. I unlocked the door and we both crept inside, looking for any possible signs of danger. There was nothing, but we both heard Carrie making love to someone upstairs. Yes, let's make love already. I heard Carrie scream. Then I heard the bed hit the wall when whoever she was with entered it. We went upstairs and Steve was standing right outside the door when I came in. What the hell is going on here? I yelled when I saw a teenager making love to Carrie on my bed with her bare feet high above his shoulders. He jumped when I screamed and looked back at me with surprise and fear on his face. Get the fuck out of my house, you pimply freak, I commanded. Yes, all right, mister. Please don't hurt me. She begged for it, he muttered, gathering up his clothes and heading downstairs. I turned to look at my future ex-wife. Why don't you come and get a cream pie for your wedding anniversary, my faithful little cuckold? She chuckled. At that moment she seemed really ugly to me, and I couldn't believe that this was the same woman I married 5 years ago. Then her face changed when Steve entered the room. Her eyes widened and her face seemed to change right in front of me. You, stop it, she screamed. What are you doing here? It's time for you to leave, Steve said before saying something in an unfamiliar language. Carrie screamed, covering her ears. I'm never leaving here, Carrie the monster exclaimed. I like it here. You can't make me leave. I'll be using this thing for many more years before I go anywhere. Steve reached into the pocket of his long coat and pulled out a long broadsword. When he picked it up, it started to catch fire and quickly burst into flames. All the while he continued to chant in an unfamiliar language. No, Carrie the monster screamed. I'll feed your bones to my dogs, little man. Semper Invictus, declared Steve, raising his sword. He swung his sword and I thought he was going to cut Carrie in two, but to my great surprise he didn't. I heard screams and saw a blinding flash of light, followed by the smell of butchered smoke, which now filled the entire room. Something was burning on the floor. Steve put away his sword and bent down to pick it up. He broke it into two parts, and the light inside it went out. It's gone forever, he said. I turned to Carrie and saw that she was lying on the bed with her eyes wide open. Apart from the bruises from the fact that the guys who made love to her treated her roughly, there were no other marks on her body. I went up to her hoping she was still alive. I saw her take a deep breath and look at me with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry, Bill, she said. Then I saw an evil grin appear on her face. But to be honest, it was a lot of fun. Looking at her, I saw confusion on her face, and then one side of her face seemed to droop a little. Carrie, I called out. Are you okay? She seemed to have a hard time focusing on my face, and she tried to say something but couldn't. You'd better call an ambulance, Steve said. I took out my phone and dialed 911, telling the dispatcher that I needed an ambulance for a possible stroke victim. 20 minutes later, an ambulance pulled up to the house. Steve had already left by then, and I opened the window to ventilate the room. Paramedics quickly examined Carrie and determined that she had a stroke. They put her on a gurney and took her to the general hospital. I followed her in my car. The epilogue. Carrie didn't survive the trip to the hospital. I called Ginny and told her what had happened. She arrived at the hospital as quickly as she could, and we both cried, hugging each other. We listened as the doctor expressed his condolences and asked if we would like to perform an autopsy. I told him it wasn't necessary. Steve stopped by the hospital to see how we were doing. I'm sorry it ended like this, he said. It's not worth it. I said, you warned me. Anyway, I think she's finished. At least it was quick and relatively painless. Maybe, he said. Here's my card. Feel free to call if you need to talk. He handed me a business card, and we shook hands before he left. Who was that? Ginny asked. A friend, I replied. After Carrie's funeral, I sold the house and bought a smaller two-bedroom apartment closer to my job. I got rid of the bedroom furniture and most of the other things we had. I didn't want anything to remind me of her. Ron and I celebrated the move with 2 cases of beer I still owed him for helping me with Carrie. I never told him exactly what happened, and he never insisted on it. And yet I can't help but think that he knew that something out of the ordinary had happened in my house that night. He really advised me to see a psychologist who would help me deal with everything that happened. I accepted his offer and spent some time with the consultant he suggested. However, I quickly realized that it was a colossal waste of time. Strangely enough, I caught myself looking under the bed a couple of times. I wasn't sure what I would find, but I still felt the need to look. Ginny respected my need to grieve and left me alone for a while. However, after a few months, I felt the need for female companionship. I've always liked Ginny, and I knew she was still in love with me. So, one Friday, I called her and was surprised to find that she was at home watching a movie. We started dating and spent nights together more than once. She says she loves me, and I believe her. To tell you the truth, I'm falling in love with her too. Who knows what the future holds for us? However, I am more than satisfied now, but I'm still keeping my eyes open. I have a beast on my shoulder and a devil behind my back. I can feel his burning breath, the smoke coming from his pipe, and he's moving under the covers or lying under the bed. He's a beast on your shoulder. There's a bounty on his head. Tilda E. Anderson End.